Hello my dear students, I am Sachin Mani and you are watching your favorite channel Social Science Ka Sachin. My dear students, in today's episode we are going to discuss a very important chapter of 9th history, and that is Socialism in Europe and Russian Revolution. I have found that some of the students they find that this chapter is quite challenging for them. But don't worry my dear children, because in today's part we are going to make this chapter is a very simple, and this chapter you find it's very interesting as well. Into the chapter we are going to discuss about a number of points. Into this chapter we are going to discuss about the age of social change. There were different types of Russian society, Russian social structure, Lenin, Stalin, most of the important concepts which we are going to discuss. So let's start the chapter. Before starting the chapter, I just wanted to tell you my dear students, first of all try to understand this meaning of word when we are discussing about, because abhi tak aapne till now you might have heard about democracy, you might have heard about the French, you might have studied about the French Revolution, you have studied, you know the different types of terminologies. But socialism is something different now. See my dear students, socialism we can find it out that it is one kind of ideology. Try to understand what kind of ideology it is. Socialism means we can find it out that when in a nation or in a country the resources are, or the resources should be equally distributed among them. The resources are equally distributed among the nation. For example, water is an important resource. Whichever the resources are available into the nation, water ho ya, soil ho, any kinds of resources, land properties ho, each and every resources, when it is equally distributed among the nation, we can find it out that that ideology is called as a socialism. Into this, I just wanted to tell you that there will not be any kind of a discrimination among the rich people, poor people. No, everyone should have an equal access into this. So that is called as a socialism. Now, how this kind of ideology were harvested into the Russia, how Russia become a socialist country, all these points we are going to discuss into the chapter. Before this, before starting with this actual part of the Russian Revolution, let's understand that in the last period or the last chapter of history's first chapter, French Revolution, you might have studied about all the how the French Revolution were carried out, how the different types of a Jacobin club come into the power, liberty, freedom, all these rights, all these everything we have studied about, into the French Revolution. Now into this chapter of socialism in Europe and Russian Revolution, I just wanted to tell you that the French Revolution has motivated the most of the European countries. Even French Revolution has led some of the new ideology, has led some of the new terminologies or the ideologies to the entire part of the world. I can say that most of the world countries they got motivated with the ideology, which ideology of the French. जो France में हो रहा था, each and everything they wanted, they were expecting into their countries. As I am telling you that, you might be knowing that we can find it out that most of the European countries during that time were ruled by the conservative ideologies. Now let's understand that what do you mean by conservative ideologies? Conservative ideologies which was based on the traditional values and thoughts. Most of the time these European powers were the conservative powers. Conservative powers in the sense which were ruled by the king or a queen. During that time they were ruling to this, and they were ruling, and the social hierarchy was, we can say that, were found into those countries, and the society was run based on the conservative ideology or the traditional values, traditional thought process, traditional system which was followed, and this kind of ideology was formed for a long period of time into the Russia. Now let's understand that when the French Revolution started coming up, when the French Revolution started motivating to the people, when the people started coming to getting the idea of liberty, freedom, brotherhood, fraternity, these kinds of a new ideology were spreading into the European countries. Now how these ideologies, when the world was getting motivated, when the European countries were started converting themselves into different types of socialist ideologies, how these kind of ideology has implemented or harvested into the Russia as well. Now let's understand that. I just wanted to tell you that into this timeline there were three different types of thought process were found into the society. First were called as liberals, second one were called as radicals, and the third were called as conservatives. Now try to understand what are the meanings of these words. What do you mean by liberals? What do you mean by radicals? And what is called as an conservatives? First of all, try to understand ये कौन थे? What kind of ideology they were? Actually, if you think about these liberal people wanted the change in the society. Liberal people wanted that no, there should not be any king or a queen. We wanted a new type of a government which will be based on some of the democratic values, which can give the equality to the freedom people, which can enhance which can give the freedom to the people, where the government will be based on the elected representatives, where there should be a parliament, there should be a judiciary systems. So we can find it out that liberals wanted the change into the society. But one thing I just wanted to tell you that definitely there was a positive change which they were expecting into the society. Liberals wanted the change into the society, but there was one thing that liberals were not called as the Democrats. Now, why the liberals were not called as the Democrats, my dear children? It was just because why the liberals were not called as the Democrats. It is just because liberals wanted the voting rights. They said that we should have a voting rights, but they were thinking that only the men in the society they will have a voting rights and the women will not have. They were little against with the rights of the voting rights for the women into the society. So the liberals were called as a non-democratic. This question is a very important question, my dear children, because in the examination this question may ask that why the liberals were non-democratic, because the liberals were not in favor to give the voting rights to the women, and they wanted that only the men should have a right to vote. At the next time, who were the radicals? Radicals also wanted the similar way like liberals. They also wanted the change into the society. They also wanted the right to property. They also wanted that there should be equality, freedom, brotherhood. All these changes also they were also expecting. But one thing that the liberals, what was the difference between the liberals and the radicals? But the liberals wanted that the men and the women both should have a right to vote. Radicals wanted that there should be a man and a woman, both of them should have a right to vote into the society, whereas the liberals were not in favor of that the women should have a right to vote. This was a slight and a small difference between the liberals and radicals. Now, who were the conservatives, my dear children? Conservatives were totally different. Conservatives means, I told you that those were believing on traditional ideology. Those were especially we can find it out that in the society, especially the conservative ideology, which was based on the monarch should be rule over the nation, and his ideology, his rules and regulations should be abide or should be followed by to the citizens. So these conservative ideologies, they were not interested into the change. They said that no change in the society. No change in the society means we can find it out that जैसा चल रहा है वैसा चलने दो, king or a king should rule to the nation and we will follow the ideology. Who were these people? Do you think that these were the poor people? Do you think that these were the middle class people? No. These were the wealthier section into the society. These were the royal families. Those were conservatives, and they were wanted that only this conservative regime or this conservative ideology should rule over the nation. It was because we can find it out that these wealthier section into the society or the royal families, they were enjoying all the powers. So this was a small difference, this was a slight difference into we can find it out that, so after this French Revolution, we can find it out that, we can find it the liberals, radicals, conservatives, these kinds of a new ideology which was coming up into the European countries, especially not only into the European countries but even into the Russia as well. Now, I just wanted to tell you one more thing, my dear children, that these conservative people, though in the initial part, they said no change into the society. But after the French Revolution, even they also accepted that the people should have some rights, we can say that, which are called as the natural rights. Right now we call it a fundamental rights, but that time it was called as a natural rights, like a freedom, equality, voting rights. These kinds of changes they started accepting. Now this was the part which we were wanting to discuss with you regarding the socialism in Europe and Russian Revolution. Into this, if you go with the next point, I just wanted to tell you that into the same timeline, we can find it out that let's understand how was the Russian society. Russian society kaise thi? What kind of changes, what kind of how the people were living, unless and until we will not understand that how the Russian society was found before the revolution, then we can't understand. So let's understand how the Russian society which was found into the European countries. If you think about the Russian society, in a Russian society, if you think about, it was clearly classified between two parts. Into the Russia, we can find it out that 85% of the people or the population were living into the rural areas, which we called it the countryside areas. They were living in the rural areas, which we called it the countryside areas. As a result, 85% and most of these people were, what they were doing? They were doing the agriculture, or they were involved into the farming activities. Even I can tell you that majority of the people, I can tell you that even 85 to 90% of the people into the rural areas or into the countryside areas, they were involved into the farming activities. Whereas if you come to the, only these 15 to 20% people, those who are living into the urban areas or into the cities, especially there were the two important cities which was called as a Moscow and a Petrograd. These were the two important cities which was found, and into these important cities, most of the people, they were working as industrial workers, because industrial revolution started coming up, and most of the industries were located into these two important cities of Moscow and Petrograd. And into these industries, most of the workers from the rural areas or into the urban areas, they started working into these industrial areas, so as industrial workers. So what I'm telling you here, into these areas, if you think about the economy, if you think about the social structure, we can find it out that these people in rural areas, agriculture was the main activity, and in the city areas, the industries were the main income source of the economical livelihood for these people. Now, I just wanted to tell you that if you think about in rural areas, into the rural areas, when as most of the people were involved into the farming activities, as a result, most all those people were not having a large kinds of lands where they were not the landlords. Into these also, we can find it out that 90% of the people, they were having a small piece of lands, or they were the landless farmers, and only 10 to 15% of the people, they were the landlords. So majority, there was a gap between we can find it out the landlords and the landless farmers into the rural areas. Whereas into the city areas also, very few percentage of the people, they were the industrialists, or they were industrial workers, and majority population into the cities, they were the industrial workers. So Russian socialism or Russian revolution means how we can bridge this gap. We can find it out that the gap between rich and poor was very high. The gap between rich and poor was very high. It was just because, why the gap was very high? It was just because of the inner city areas, industrialists, they were enjoying all the powers, and the workers, their condition was miserable. So that the industrialists, they were enjoying all the powers, and they were rich into the society and they were powerful as well. At the same time, into the we can find it out into the urban areas, the industrial workers, there were long working hours. Working hours were very long. Not only this, we can find it out that getting the jobs into the industries was very difficult. Even their wages were also not satisfactory. They were getting a very low wages. So their condition into the city areas was very miserable. I'm just telling you that not only this, even I can tell that even into the countryside areas or into those farmers, those who are living into these areas, especially the same condition was occurred. The landless farmers, we can find it out, their economical condition was so miserable and pathetic, whereas all the landlords, they were enjoying all the powers. So as a result, we can find it out that Russian Revolution, when we are thinking about the Russian Revolution, the problems of the landless farmers and the problems of the industrial workers was almost same, and how this gap between rich and poor, the gap between landless laborers and landlords, the gap between industrial workers and industrialists, how it has been reduced. That is nothing but the industrial revolution, or we can find it out that is called as a revolution into the Russia. As I am telling you that when we are thinking about this, one thing I just wanted to tell you, my dear children, this revolution, industrial revolution, actually started from 1914 onwards. Actually, before this Russia was traditionally, which was a very vast and a big empire, which was ruled by monarchism. And there was only one religion into the Russia, that was a Christianity, and the Russia was ruled by a very we can find it out that this vast empire was ruled by one of the important emperor, and his name was Tsar Nicholas. As we can find it, Tsar Nicholas I. As the Tsar Nicholas I, he was ruling to the Russia. Now how this we can find it on the Christianity was very important prominent religion to this, and this we can find it out that during this, at the same timeline, I just wanted to tell you that into the European countries also, we can find it out that different types of revolutionary changes were started coming up. I just wanted to tell you that in Italy, in Italy there was one of the important prominent social reformer. His name was Giuseppe Mazzini. He started at a we can find it out that he started two secret societies, Young Italy and Young Europe, and he started motivating to the people. We can find it out that he started not only to the motivating to the people, he started creating, we can find it out, inspiring to the people to come together and to form a nation state. Even we can find he started asking for the liberty, equality, equal distribution, judicious use of the resources and all. At the same time, we can find it out that so there were many kinds of such kinds of rebellious or the revolutionary activities were carried out. Not only this, even in Russia as well. I just wanted to tell you that was one of the important social reformer and a philosopher. His name was Robert Owen. Robert Owen, he was a social reformer, and we can find it out that no doubt he was we can find it out he brought one new ideology. He brought one new we can say that concept, which was called as an setting up the cooperatives. Now what do you mean by cooperative? Cooperatives का मतलब क्या है? Cooperatives means he wanted that all the people should come together, few people should come together, they should start the economical activities, and whatever the profit they are getting, that can be shared. Even after that, we can find Louis Blanc, he started supporting to this Robert Owen's ideology, and he said that he wanted that now the government should give the encouragement to this we can say that the concept of this cooperatives, so that these kinds of social reformers, they wanted to bring some changes into the society. In Russia, there was a very important philosopher. In Russia, there was a very important person who wanted to bring, and his contribution was really noteworthy. That was called as Karl Marx. This Karl Marx, he wanted that, he was totally against the capitalism. He said that we can find it out that only he stated that only the industrial workers work into the factories and the owners gain the profit. So he wanted that the property and the profit should be equally shared among them. He wanted that there should be equal distribution of the wealth, equal distribution of the properties required into the nation. So we can find it out that these kinds of social reformers like Karl Marx, like Louis Blanc, like Robert Owen wanted to bring into the society, and their contribution was really noteworthy, and people started getting motivated with their involvement or their contribution. Now I just wanted to tell you one more thing. I just wanted to tell you that there were many people, there were many new different types of organizations, parties started coming up. One thing, before this 1914, all the political parties were considered as illegal. I'm just telling you that. But I'm into this timeline, I can tell you that in Germany, the Labour's Party started coming up. We can Socialist Workers' Party started coming up. Like the same way in Russia also, we can find it out that these kinds of labor unions, these kinds of industrial, we can say the labor parties started coming up into the factories. Most of the times, the labor conditions were totally miserable. They were not getting the proper wages. Their economical condition was very pathetic. Getting the jobs into the factories was very challenging. At the same time, there were long working hours. It was extended up to 14 hours, and sometimes it was extended to the 16 hours. Sometimes during the festival times only they were getting some work. Even when the festival gets over, most of the people, again the unemployment was increasing. Even I can tell you that not only this, this workers condition was so miserable into this time. Even there were again into the workers also there was a social hierarchy. Some of the metal workers, they were considered one of the superior among all the workers. They were considered that we are having a different skills and all. So these kinds of individual differences were found into the Russia when this Russian revolution was carried out. At the same time, one more thing I just wanted to do, but whenever these kinds of labor unions, labor parties, when they were started fighting against the for their rights, that time we can find it out that these workers were coming together, and they started resisting, they started asking, they started protesting against the government. So all these ideologies, all these this was the economical structure, this was the social structure into this. Now into the next part, we'll be discussing about how the labor unions started coming up and how we can find it out, the changes into the Russia started coming up. Who was the Vladimir Lenin? What was we can find it out the contribution of Father Gapon. We can find it out that how this Bolshevik party started coming up. Who were the Soviets? All these parts will be discussing into the next episode. Till the time, stay tuned with this चैप्टर वीकर। आई होप दैट, मुझे लगता है कि आपका ये पहला पार्ट जो आपने कंप्लीट किया है, द एज ऑफ सोशल चेंज एंड द सोशल स्ट्रक्चर, द इकोनॉमी ऑफ द रशिया, you are clear with this. I hope that you understood. So that I just wanted that you give your comments, share, we can find it out that your comments whether you have understood or not. And the next period we'll be discussing about the next part, how the revolution has converted into the socialism in Russia. Till the time, stay tuned with social science ka Sachin, जाने माने सचिन माने।